I call that the skeleton beat. And there's a story behind that. I bet you guessed that. Here's the story. I was playing with a great guitar player, a friend of mine, and he played in kind of this jam band thing. They did a lot of Grateful Dead, they did a lot of Allman Brothers, stuff like that. So he's telling me about playing this gig, and there was a bunch of people there, and they were all having a good time and grooving, and the band's jamming. It's, you know, big sweaty club, lots of people. And he said everybody was out there doing their skeleton dance, and he was kind of doing this. It kind of cracked me up and made me think about it. So as I started to play some of that music, some Dead tunes and some Allman Brothers and other things that were kind of jammy, I sort of fell into this beat that you heard there on the intro, and it just seemed to be effective. And there were a couple things about that I liked. It was loose and sort of floaty, but it also allowed me to sort of, as you heard, move in and out of that groove a lot, and there was a lot of space for jamming, improvisation, and textures that were kind of cool. You could go a lot of different directions with it. I thought it might be helpful, so we're going to talk about the skeleton beat. So here's the stripped down version of the beat. You can play it where a couple things overlap, or you can play the whole thing kind of linear. Let's talk a little bit about both. The ride pattern, like the ride and snare, is basically this. 1, 2, 3, 4. A lot of times I'll write 8th notes on the hi-hat, and we'll get into it later, but that's one of the things that allows me to sort of jam a lot, because this takes over the time. So let's put it together with the bass drum and the hi-hat now. And the bass drum pattern, I think, is basically just 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Hey, you may have noticed in that last example, when I put everything together, I was adding in more than just that basic pattern. I was adding in what we call ghost notes, and they create a very nice texture underneath it. For some reason, I'm talking about skeletons and ghosts today, but I guess that's just where we're at. In any event, if you're not familiar with that stuff, don't worry about it. Just play the basic pattern. If you understand ghost notes and adding in that texture, by all means, add that stuff in. Or if you're ready to get that basic thing going and then take it to the next level, feel free to start experimenting with adding in those inner beats or ghost notes. I do it all the time. Hey, if you're digging this video on any level, I please ask you to like and subscribe so we can get this out to as many folks as we possibly can. Thanks in advance. Now, you can play that real linear where you never hit the snare drum with the ride cymbal. You can also add a little bit of another skip beat in there as well, and that would sound like this. 1, 2. So you can hear there clearly, sometimes I played 1, sometimes I played 1 and. So you sort of got that. And you can hear right there, already I heard dug-a-dun, 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 dug-a-dun. The groove itself just sets up this very open thing to be able to occur. You kind of have to be a little careful because you can sort of go crazy with it, but if you're playing with the right people in the right context, you can certainly do that. The one thing that's weird about it is this kind of the swingy, jammy, funky version of the Neil Peart ride beat, heard on songs like Spirit of Radio, YYZ. You've heard that sound before. It kind of goes something like this. Another thing that's really cool about the skeleton beat and in a jam context is that you're allowed to go to many different kinds of textures. And I do this in a lot of situations anyway, just because I like the way that it sounds. Instead of riding on a hi-hat or on a ride cymbal, I'll ride on the snare drum, on the floor tom, on a rim. What you have to be careful of when you're playing on the snare drum is that you don't play the flat flams. You'll want to play kind of the linear version, and I'll bounce around on it a little bit to give you an idea of what that looks and sounds like. Here we go, skeleton beat, riding on the snare drum. can do the same thing on the floor tom. Riding on the floor tom, same pattern. As soon as you get to two different surfaces like that, even on one, if you're using the rim and getting it all ringy-dingy, I mean, that's a lot. So you can get these nice conversations happening and sort of, I hesitate to use the word dink-donk around, but you can just improvise and sort of freely and see what happens as you're having a conversation between all these different instruments. Just that groove itself is going to set up a lot of stuff. 3-beat phrases, lots of other little things. So here we go, a little bit of that concept on the floor tom. I will not use dink-donk again, I promise. The hell did that come from? Anyway. Same concept goes for playing on the rim as well. So I'll try a little bit of that. So as you can plainly see, there's many different directions you can do this. Tons of textures, tons of different ways you can move into different sounds. If you've got a long jam going, you could start on the rim, move to the snare, go to the ride. If you want to start another solo, you could start riding on the floor tom. You know, you could come back and play some of that on the hi-hat as well. You can ride 8th notes on the hi-hat, not ride 8th notes on the hi-hat, move stuff around, float over the bar line. There's a million different things you can do with this one little basic idea. To close out, I'm just going to play a little bit of the basic idea and then see if I can run into some snare drum, rim, floor tom, or whatever. I don't know what's exactly going to happen. I'm just going to free float, and I won't say that thing, and see what happens with it. Hope you get something out of it, and we'll see you next time.